Hello, and welcome to another episode of TA Tech Unboxed, the podcast that's chatting to the people behind the tools that are built for the TA and HR communities. If you're listening to this, don't forget to jump over to our YouTube channel where you'll be able to see demos from every guest that's been on the show and a bunch more. Our aim is to be a huge repository for you guys to come check out some demos and hopefully pick up some cracking tools to use day to day. I'm Chris Aslam, and I'm here with my co-host, Mr. Darren Bush. Mr. Darren Bush, how are you?
Chris, I am, we're both very hectic at the moment. Both got
Busy.
some holidays.
Yeah, holidays do that to you.
Yeah.
There's supposed to be a time of rest.
Meetings just happen right before we go.
Oh yeah, meetings and podcast recordings just before we try to leave for holidays. But
and a podcast and requests from me as well to get some stuff over. But yeah,
of course, will always be requests to get things done faster. But you know that's what we're here for. Today's show, fascinating, interesting, right?
It probably is speed is what we're going to come up into it actually. How can we speed up the recruitment process? How can we do things better? In your opinion, Chris, what can we do quicker in the hiring process?
What can we do quicker?
That we're not doing
I
now?
genuinely think like with this stuff, I think like if you've got a neat TA unit, that everything is inches. I think everything is an inch. So like we can get to response faster. We can get to applications faster. We can find a way to, respond to applicants. For me, I think the hiring process gets slowed with HMs. I really do. I think that area is a big development area for most TA teams. Time to getting aligned to a particularly new recs, right? So how long it takes you to really understand a role to be able to build a talent pool at speed. Or if it's repeating roles, right? It's like making sure that you are building an effective talent pool over time. For me, particularly, like the recs are often interchangeable quite quickly. We might have 10 engineers, 10 salespeople, 10 marketing people. But in larger orgs where you're just hiring for engineers, like making sure that you've got this repeatable system, those kind of things, like for really understanding the demand from your HM, and then also getting buy-in and being that strategic talent partner. I really think those are huge development areas for all of us.
Yeah.
We spoke to Stan and Rainier last night, right? It's like there's a threat to us coming, so we got to get better at this stuff. We've got to make it easy. We've got to make it fast, otherwise AI is going to replace us, according to them. The guys over at Scotty AI. So yeah, fascinating. What about you? What do you think?
Yeah, I think if you get you will hear about this. If you get things done up front, if you get the hiring manager who knows exactly what they're looking for, and you've kind of managed to kind of get all the requirements there, and they got to see some profiles, you could speed it up massively from that point onwards. If you can have talent already in your talent pool or your pipeline, and start booking interviews like that week. Also, I think dedicated, like you said about hiring manager time, dedicated time, set time.
Just planning, good planning. Yeah.
Yeah, to say, I like, we're having the call today, say it's Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, Fridays, and I set some availability to start, screening CVs and come back and start booking interviews.
I don't think they realise how powerful their impact is in the process, and how much they can block. So lack of clarity and intake, bad talent pool, slow hiring. Slow in responding with feedback, not filling out a scorecard, again, blocks. These things, the downstream effects, like 10x. It might take 10 minutes to finish a scorecard, but it might, if you spend 10 days to get that scorecard back, the effect of that is 10x, right? It's like, I don't know if that's an actual stat, but you know what I mean? It's like,
it's a Chris stat.
It's damaging down the other end, isn't it? So like getting super tight with all of that stuff. But for me, the big one is like not getting aligned fast. I think like you're often speed
alignment that you talk about.
Yeah, we often speed through intake and think, right, I've got everything I need now. And you run off to market 2 weeks downstream, like there's a change, or you're not close enough, or the HM doesn't realize to update you, or I don't know, there's been developments in those things. They're just a significant impact on your budget, your capability. We only got so many, like HMs, if you are listening to this, there are only so many emails that we can send, right? Yeah. There are only so many people in the talent pool. If we don't get it right first, it might affect our ability to hire the best people. So for me, like, we try to significantly over-index on that particular phase because we know it slows us downstream. So, Darren, who do we have on today's show?
So today, Chris, we've got Nick Livingston from Honeit. Nick, I've known you for about 5 years now, and it's great to have you on the show. Don't know if you want to just tell us about, tell our guests or audience in terms of who you are and a little bit about your company.
Sure. Hey, everybody. I'm Nick Livingston. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Honeit. I'm married with 3 wonderful daughters. I've been a recruiting and talent acquisition partner since I fell out of college and stumbled into this profession. I love the profession, and I'm happy to be here today.
So we start every show digging a little bit behind kind of you and how you came into what you're doing now. You said you're in talent for a bit. Like, who were you doing it for? What kind of work it was? That we'd love to know a little bit more.
Sure. I moved to New York City with my guitar and my suitcase to work in the music business. This was right after Napster and all these peer-to-peer streaming services like destroyed the industry. And I hustled to get a few meetings and interviews, but I quickly realized that like the music business was, they weren't hiring, right? And looking for a job in New York with not knowing anybody was pretty challenging. So I ended up going to an agency. My cousin actually referred a friend, hey, go talk to my cousin who works at a recruiting firm. She can maybe help you find a job. And stumbled into that. They said, oh, you seem like a people person who likes tech. Like, have you ever thought about tech recruiting? I go, what is that, right? But they hired me there. I helped build out a technical recruiting practice, which was interesting. And I really enjoyed it. You learn about business, you learn about how business gets done, you learn about all the different roles and teams and job titles and things it takes to build a, software or build a business. And so I was kind of hooked, and it didn't take long for me to realize that like engineers and product managers were the new rock stars, like literally. And so, rather than being a talent scout in the music business, I realized being a talent scout in this, business world was a really kind of exciting thing. So cut my teeth in agency recruitment, followed my boss to a technology company, and then ended up placing a contract recruiter at one of our clients, DoubleClick, which was later acquired by Google. They were one of the earliest, innovative tech companies in New York City who in ad tech, but ended up placing this wonderful recruiter, Susie, and got to know her. And she said, Nick, you should go in-house. You know what I mean? She's like, you got to try the in-house. You got to experience that. Was a real good mentor early on. So she referred me to MTV Networks, where kind of full circle got to work back into the music business, which I thought was this is perfect. I'm like helping build out, this is back when Viacom and MTV Networks were deciding kind of build versus buy. And every media company had to figure out mobile media and social media and video streaming and all these amazing technologies. And Viacom decided to build, which was awesome because I got to help hire all of the engineers and product and technical people and was a director of recruitment there. So, and it was also fun to kind of experience working with big brands and logos, right? Having MTV, VH1, Nickelodeon, Comedy Central, Harmonix, all these great things to talk about. Sure was different getting candidates to bite and getting on the phone to talk a little bit about what they want to do next. So it was interesting to see that that difference of being an external recruiter versus going in-house. The other thing I quickly realized was now I'm managing, 12 technical recruiting agencies and vendors on our list. And you start to quickly realize not every submission is the same and that some recruiters do things very differently than others. And it was this real peek into, wow, how do we as internal talent partners work and partner with external recruiting partners and communication there to motivate them to help us and then help get them, placement fees and some of that stuff, which was very interesting seeing it on the other side. So learned a lot there, spent 4 years there. And then during that kind of learning and working with not only technical teams, but like business teams, right? People creating these new deals with Netflix and creating these new syndication and content partnership deals. I met a lot of really amazing business leaders who had like MBAs. And so it kind of motivated me to go back to school and think about brushing up on some business stuff because I was a math and physics person in school. So that motivated me to move to the Bay Area, get my MBA at Berkeley. But during the day, I was working at early stage technology companies. So I transferred working at Taleo because we were a power user of Taleo at MTV Networks, and I got to know them because we were really pushing Taleo to its limits. And then went in-house at an early stage company and got to help build out TA functions from the ground up with early stage technology companies, and got to see that whole world of hyper growth and hyper competitive talent acquisition when you're back to no brand and you're one of 3,000 startups in the Bay Area looking for a software engineer. And so kind of back to what can you do and how are you scrappy and use what you have to figure out how to attract the right folks and get them through the process efficiently.
You're at this point. I've got your LinkedIn profile on my left here, so it looks like I'm well researched, but actually I'm staring at it. You're at Treasure 4 in the Bay Area.
This would have been at TubeMogul. This would have been, much earlier on at TubeMogul, who was a video advertising company. Yeah,
right.
And as the head of talent.
Right, I see. And then so you're at TubeMogul. You then have an epiphany, because that kicks off what looks like on your LinkedIn here a moment where you start Honeit. What did that look like for you?
So it was a couple things all at once. One, I had the opportunity to work with some amazing founders, John and Brett, and kind of I got that bug of like, wow, building something is really interesting and going through hypergrowth, building, So part of that was motivation. The other piece was, looking at the interview experience, candidate screening to interview experience within a company. And especially going through a scale up, you realize how quickly the interview process changes. Like Brett and John, they used to be the first interview, and they were great interviewers and assessors of talent. Well, as you hire recruiters and managers and directors and VPs and the C-suite, your co-founders get pushed to the very end of the process, right? And, we would go through all of this time, all of these conversations, and have nothing to show for it. Right. And then here's Brett and John. We finally get someone on their calendar, and they knew it within 5 minutes. This person wasn't going to be either a culture fit or wasn't quite right or didn't have the core competencies that we're looking for across all of our different teams. Right. And I just think back and I go, oh my gosh, like that is so much wasted time for us. That is so much wasted time for a candidate. That's so much wasted time for the engineering leads and managers and people that had all these conversations with that candidate. What if we could get our best and brightest assessors or interviewers involved earlier in the process at a fraction of the time and cost of like back to back conversations, asking the same questions, hearing the same answers, and scribbling notes. So there was this fundamental disconnect in not only like the note taking, which is I know more of a common theme these days, but it's a way in which you have multiple people involved, hiring as a team sport. How do you have clear communication, right? No misinterpretation, right? And transparency through all of those separate conversations that have typically been black boxes. So, at the same time, I'm going to business school at Berkeley in the evening, learning about how marketing and finance and accounting, all these other departments use data to make better decisions. And I'm coming back to my day job, and I'm clickety-clacking, doing executive search internally. All the other recruiters are clickety-clack, scribbling notes, trying to figure out what this QA automation engineer is telling them when they're not QA automation engineers. So it kind of was this light bulb to your point of like, what are the inputs and the outputs of our daily conversations with hiring teams, right? Intake calls, kickoff calls, those are full of information. Similarly, phone screens, reference calls, interviews, closing calls, onboarding calls, exit interviews throughout the employee's life cycle. So that was the epiphany of that. You've got this really tedious experience for everybody, candidates, recruiters, hiring teams, executives. Hasn't changed in many years. And then you've got this simple issue of you talk to a lot of people, yet you have nothing to show for it. You can't search your calls. You can't share insights from your calls. And that's where this topic of interview intelligence came to be. And we've been very excited and passionate about this concept since, 2015. We've been screaming at the top of our lungs. Fun to finally see, this becoming a market in our industry.
It's fascinating, isn't it? Because I think recording an interview, the like mindset shift has happened. It seems like in the last 12 months to me. If you'd have said to me 2 years ago, Chris, we're going to record all of your screening calls, I think I would have wanted to know. Like, I've never been against it, but like, why? Then you add the note taking element. All of a sudden, everyone wants to do it because now there's purpose behind it. It's not just checking up on folks. It's now actually going to help you doing it. And there seems to have been this epiphany moment for everybody, right? Where it's now widely adopted, way more acceptable. We're now talking about how do we convince candidates to feel comfortable. How do we encourage candidates to feel comfortable with having a recorder in the call as well, right? Whereas a year ago, 2 years ago, maybe I'm a bit behind there, but 2 years ago, the thought of having to ask a candidate if I could record an interview, right? I don't know,
Yeah,
Darren,
people
I know you
squirm. I mean, and actually, to like our data all shows, we've been at this for many years, but candidates don't balk. It was never really the candidate; it was always the recruiter who have never been necessarily held accountable for their conversations. And so we could talk about this a bit, unpack it further, where we start talking about recording hiring manager calls and untrained hiring managers and the potential risk that might introduce to a company versus, no, let's keep it in HR. Let's actually have people who know and are trained and are the experts at candidate screening and initial interview conversations. Let's use that to actually go from screening calls to comprehensive interviews, which actually then saves all these downstreams and saves all this downstream scheduling and all these issues that happen when we don't share data and we just scribble notes and share opinions. So yeah, I think you're right. A couple of things. I think recruiters have really realized there is a benefit and a time savings and a productivity increase when you start to record your calls, but more importantly, it's capturing the insights. And then what we're finding is, rather than it just being about note taking, or so I can remember what the person said, and again, we work with external recruiters, executive search firms, RPO teams, internal TA teams. So not everybody wants to share their entire conversation or their entire transcript, but they want to hang up the phone and share a few minutes of insights to save the hiring managers from having to repeat the same interview over and over. And back to the point earlier, what if you could share a few insights with your CEO? They can hear it. And if they're excited about what they hear, they'll hop on a call and start closing the best candidates.
And I agree with you on this. It's our ability, like there are in a sales process, maybe like I might control it from end to end, right? I might be in every meeting. I might be there with my business partner and anyone else in our business that goes through as part of a sales process, right? But I'm always there. I'm always a constant. So I've always got the insights from each session, but I'm not in every interview. I'm not in every conversation about that candidate. I mean, it's not just interviews that should be recorded, right? It's that with, the insights from those sessions, the scorecards, everything that goes into making the decision at the back end. We need a way of aggregating all of that. It's super important to making a great decision. The more you aggregate, the more we're able to get to the end. And the CEO goes, right, I understand now. And also I know what the drivers are for wanting to work here, like what they're looking for in their career and how to get them over the line, rather than, I mean, like we've all been in meetings. You've worked with startups, I work with startups, Darren, you're in, like how many times have we got a candidate to final stage, get in, and somebody at the last step like screws it up?
And then there's no documentation of what exactly it was, only
It's
that
our
little
fault.
huddle of being like, they said something I wasn't. It's like, well, is that you or is that them? And
Self-reflect, yes, it's a self-reflecting challenge, isn't it? It's like you've got to make sure that person in that meeting is ready to be like, no, I screwed the pooch on this one.
And that's where bias and that's where all this stuff happens. And so it's like, if for companies that do want to have a faster, fair interview process, we can talk about note taking, but it's actually more about, how do we remove my personal interpretation or opinion from what someone just told me?
Yeah.
Right. Because again, and especially within candidate screening and submissions, if we even focus on that really important step of going from a pile of resumes to a short list, the screening process is probably the most important yet overlooked step in the recruiting process. And that's where we have the most to add, you know what I mean? But I think what we're seeing now, though, is actually this concept of interview collaboration, which is something that's never been possible because we've never had real-time interview data. Well, now what we're seeing is one recruiter on the very first call can ask technical questions, industry questions, behavioral questions, a couple of core value questions on, again, the very first call, click 2 buttons, and instantly share unbiased data and insights with 5 people on the hiring team who can each invest 3 minutes, hear a few answers in their specific expertise, right? The Java lead can hear the Java answers. The culture person can hear the culture question. The fintech guru can hear the fintech answer. And boom, we can, as a team, assess a candidate from a single conversation. And this is where external recruiting firms, executive search firms are loving the platform as well, because they're further from the hiring and decision makers. But now the junior recruiter at an external firm can have one call and get alignment from the recruiting lead, the account manager, the internal corporate recruiter doesn't have to rescreen them, the hiring manager doesn't have to rescreen them. And now everybody's aligned and recognizes that, Darren's amazing, even though his resume is a 6 out of 10. We got to talk to Darren. You know what I mean?
Nick, I've posted about this before, and I completely agree. I love what you're saying, what the product does, and you can do 5-minute snippets. You can save so much time. And now, half an hour, 45-minute interview with a recruiter, you get 5 minutes. But when I ever post things like that, I always get a section of the audience talk about your editing the video. You as a recruiter picking
that's
the
where
highlights.
You're doing your own human sentiment analysis of the call.
This was the view, but I know what my answer, but I'd like to hear from you, Nick.
Well, that's just it. So 2 things. You want to give recruiters complete control. With this whole thing about AI, we don't want AI making our decisions and giving us a green light, red light, right? No. What data and technology and AI can do is it can help summarize and help us share insights to help us make better decisions, or more importantly, as recruiters and talent partners, to share data with our decision makers and stakeholders and hiring teams to help them make better decisions faster. So part of this is, when you do a call in Honeit, let's say, it's just a few clicks during the call to instantly capture those key insights and answers to the interview questions you're asking, right? It's not going back and editing and clipping and doing any of that stuff. That's where the technology gives recruiters hours back of their day. We can finally just focus on asking amazing questions, building rapport, and instead of a 40-minute write-up, it takes 2 minutes to select a few highlights, add the resume, and boom, Slack the link to your team. So it's not the editing stuff that a lot of people are thinking. But you can curate, because just like we don't share compensation information necessarily with everybody, or if someone says something confidential, you don't necessarily want to pass that along. Or even if it was a video call, you don't even necessarily want to share the video downstream to it to push bias and things like that. So again, it's how do you balance curation, let's call it, or selecting what is appropriate to be passed along. But again, it's no longer my interpretation or opinion. It's the transcript of what the person said, the summary of that transcript, and then the audio snippet where a hiring team can hear how that person exactly said it, so it has zero recruiter bias.
Yeah, I love it.
And then at the end, Darren, please can you give me your opinion? I need you to
I'm
remove it, but then put it back in.
I'm with Nick. When I post it, my view is if it's 30, 45 minutes interview with the recruiters, and you then take that 5-minute snippet, the feedback has been you're picking the highlights, the individual. They're missing everything out. But I think your job as a recruiter is to be the curator, is to pick out those elements where you've been asked to ask questions. The 5 minutes is enough time for an individual to make an idea, an assessment based on the question being asked, if they were good enough, if that person, and it's down, and it's the candidate's answering it. It's not like you're editing or changing the answer.
The agenda is screen in, right? The agenda is to screen in, not to screen out. Yes,
exactly. You're not screening out, but it just gives you a flavour of, okay, I heard the candidate, I understand what they're looking for. Yeah, they sound super interesting. Let's meet that person.
I'm not writing notes on candidates I'm rejecting to send to HMs to read. I don't get the point when people argue that. It's like I'm sending them because there is an affirmation that I do think this person should move into the process. So
the trick is when you hear something good that's not on the resume and you're like, oh, this is a high potential candidate. This is something that we should. A lot of times we've never had that way to. We've never had the ability.
You're picking that bit out and saying, like, if a hiring manager is saying I don't like the CV, the idea I've seen it when you spoke about with Honeit is you're picking out maybe his experience that wasn't on their CV and saying, well, they actually did this piece, and I'm going to show you I'm going to send you a 2-minute clip, and you can listen to their experience here, which wasn't on their CV. So you're trying to sell the candidate. That's all I always see that the software able to do is highlight things that aren't on their.
It's really, we all know it's beyond just the hard skills and the buzzwords on a resume, right? We know there's these hard skills or competencies as well as all of these soft skills, and many would argue it's the soft skills nowadays that might be more important and actually lead to retention and performance management and growing with the organization versus the hard skills you have when you come in. So what's always been tricky for recruiters is, transferable skills. How do we even, hiring managers don't believe us that this person's trying. Listen to what they just told me about how they created this thing from scratch, trying to solve this huge problem. And it's like, it's no longer my opinion.
You're able to now back it up, right? It's like
trust.
It's really hard to build trust as a recruiter until you've made hundreds of hires in the same role profile that hasn't changed, so the same HM to build that trust with you. Now you can say, no, look, but we can shorten that loop now because, hey, you can see the questions I've asked, you can listen to the answers, take my opinion, see what you think, with evidence, not just like we say, like that black hole of that call I had that I thought someone was good. I know you chatted to 3 people that I thought were good that you didn't think were good, but now I can able to give a bit of evidence to it. It's fascinating.
Nick, I'd like to ask about Honeit. So, where does Honeit the product start and where does it finish? Can you give us an overview?
Yeah, so I've seen there's been a lot of investment and there's been a lot of innovation in sourcing, let's call it, right? The first S in recruitment, sourcing. There's scheduling, there's screening, and there's submissions. If we were to just simplify what we do as talent partners versus, say, downstream interviewing and on-site interviews and things like that. So, in our wheelhouse, there's sourcing, and then we've been piecing together all of these disparate tools outside of our ATS to do the other 3 S's in many cases, right? How do we get someone on the phone at a convenient time? How do we have not just a screen, but a real comprehensive conversation with that candidate and ask amazing questions? And then comes the most tedious part is that write-up or submission. And that's funny where that's where many recruiters spend more time or double the amount of time summarizing their call than they did talking to the person. And that's where recruiter burnout happens. And you have back-to-back calls. It's tomorrow before you finally have time to write someone up and you forget why you liked them, right? So if we take a look at the 4 S's, there's this giant gap between the sourcing tool we all use and love, whatever it is, and then the filing cabinet, which is the ATS. And so we're really trying to fill this gap where for recruiting leaders and talent acquisition leaders and agency owners, there's so many things that happen within that process. And because we've been using so many different tools like a Calendly for this, a Zoom for that, my personal cell phone for the text message, my dialer for the outbound call, Otter AI for the note taker. And it still have to spend 45 minutes typing up my write-up, which I send through email, probably. So all of those important things we talked about, many of them are offline and outside of our ATS. And that's why everybody's so frustrated with their ATS as being this thing I have to put data into. Well, we took a step back and went back to first principles of what is most important. It's getting a candidate on the phone quickly, having a great conversation, and instantly sharing insights with decision makers. So scheduling, screening, and submissions. And yes, we can push all this data into ATSs or you can download a PDF, but more importantly, it's just a link. So you can paste a link into Slack or paste a link into the ATS after a call.
And there's a common question that we've asked to folks that are in your space. That link that gets sent, of course, there's a risk element in there, right? So can you tell us a little bit about how you guys are, like what that looks like in terms of like protection and data? Yeah.
So we call them share links, and they're lightweight and flexible, which is great. They're also, secure, right, and safe, and can't guess them and things like that. But they also come with an expiration date, so you can set it to live for a day, 2 days, a week, however long you want to give your hiring manager.
Like you publish and you have it like live for 30 days. Oh, nice.
Yeah,
cool.
Paste it into Slack, and then this link will self-destruct in 2 days. So get back to me quickly with feedback, right? Which you can also do through the link to expedite that feedback loop from the hiring manager. The other good thing about the link is that it's tracked for clicks and views and things like that. So if you're an external recruiter and you're submitting through a VMS or you don't have the visibility into the hiring manager, you know that link has been now clicked 4 times by the client. That would be a great time to follow up for next steps and things like that. So there's visibility into the submission. And again, because we're timestamping all of this stuff, we have these incredible KPIs and metrics that TA leaders love because finally they can see time to schedule, time to screen, talk time to submit, time to review, time to feedback that they can't see in their ATS or traditional stack.
Love that. Just quickly, I'm going to just mark this spot before we jump to the next bit. We've got 20 minutes left on the timer for recording. Darren, I know you've made the notes, read them more than I have. Is there anywhere you want to go from here?
You didn't talk about exit interviews. Is that something you wanted to bring
Well, we
up
could
at all?
maybe we could talk a little about the kickoff or intake calls. Again, that's
Yeah,
back
yeah.
to more TA and something
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
like
yeah.
super vital.
We also,
okay.
in the intro, fun enough, is where we got to
That's what we were doing.
as one of my
Okay.
pain points.
Yeah,
So,
we can geek out with that. And again,
Let's
it's not
do that.
about note
We can do
taking.
that.
It's
Yeah.
like, well, okay, we can go into it. But.
Yeah, I can do that.
Go on, Dan.
3, 2, 1. You spoke a lot about the kickoff call being one of the most important calls, or and the screening call as well. Why is that in your opinion?
Yeah, I mean, just like screening calls with candidates, which are super important to figure out what's not on the resume and what's next, and the right? The kickoff or intake call, it's already part of most good recruiters' workflow. That's where we uncover the wants versus needs and everything that's not on the job description. So that conversation, I would argue, is probably one of the most important conversations in recruitment and hiring. However, if we take a step back and look at the output of intake calls, you hang up the phone with an amazing, compelling, awesome hiring manager, and what do we typically have? We've got some scribbled notes, maybe.
Yeah,
maybe it was a call where we had
maybe
to have
a job advert, maybe or job description you got from it. Not much.
Or we probably already had that and they copy and paste that and sent that to you before the kick. Maybe not, right? But all of that information, all of that human insight, the pitch, the sell, the opportunity for growth, all that stuff that we talked about, there's nothing to show for it historically. And again, maybe you use Zoom to record the call, great. What we're trying to say is, how can recruiters and talent partners work smarter and elevate those conversations, but also automate all the other stuff around the call before, during, and after, and use insights from the call to attract the right candidates, and we can talk about how we do that, or to get the right candidates through your process faster. So after an intake call, people in Honeit can create call guides. That's a big part of the platform, where you can create call guides for all of your most meaningful conversations, reference calls, intake calls, technical phone screens. But after an intake call, and the hiring manager tells you about why this amazing opportunity is open and an important part of the business, that little answer, that little snippet, that little soundbite, wouldn't that be something interesting to share with prospective candidates that you're reaching out to on LinkedIn to try to say, hey, let's talk? So
I quite often think that like those snippets are like, I wish I recorded this. I wish I had that visually like recorded so that we could use that in our outreach. I know the content in it is also super important, and I'm with you on this, by the way, Nick. We actually in which you haven't heard for our listeners here. I know it will be a seamless show for you guys, and it won't look like anything's been cut. But Nick hasn't heard that we spoke about in the intro to this call. We talked about what do we feel like is the most impactful time blocker, right, of the process. And for me, I think intake and time to alignment on what the need is versus what my workflow is producing is where the game is won and lost. Most of the work goes in at that top of funnel, building those people at the top. A lot of people put, it takes 7 hours to interview people. No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't. It's the, once you've got your core pool of people, it's building that initial group of individuals. That meeting is the most important meeting that you will have during the entire recruiting process, in my opinion, because everything else after it should be structured. Nothing should change after that. That meeting is our opportunity to get a baseline on what good looks like. Right?
And you said the word, I think the most important word there is alignment. Again, you've got companies, everybody's busy. You're pulling in interviewers that are pulled in to interview, and they don't know what the new role is. They don't know what the rec is. They didn't read the job description. So imagine after one kickoff call with just 2 people, the recruiter and the hiring manager, you can hang up the phone, and sure, we capture all the calls. So we record the call, we transcribe the call, we summarize the call, etc. And so then you can share select insights with the interview team, the business stakeholder, the SVP. You can share it with your recruiter and sourcers who are going to be partnering with you on the search. If you end up opening this to external agencies, you can share insights with them without bothering the hiring manager to re-explain it again. And most importantly, we're holding hiring managers accountable, because now what they told us they're looking for is documented. And for the first time ever, we can push back a little, say, okay, I get these candidates aren't right, but that's not what you told me.
No,
And we can push back a little bit,
Yeah.
again, as consultative partners, to say, if the goalposts change, that's fine, but this is not going to affect my KPIs. And
well, it is going to affect my KPIs, and you're responsible for it. I think that's the
but
thing.
we're going to notate, and we're going to update the reporting and
We're
metrics
going to work
based on this pivot.
Yeah.
So
I
so
like it because you can create battle cards for in call. So if someone comes up and says, "I get this currently. How do you guys deal with this?" That you can create loads of stuff from those sessions. And I know I'm talking more broadly about intake rather than how Honeit will solve these problems. But I am 100% with you that meeting is unbelievably important. I was explaining it to one of our talent partners the other day that we don't go to market until that's done properly. Otherwise, everything's wasted. We need value propositions. We need to get aligned on the process. We need to get, like, in our intakes, as an example, we try to make sure that if you've got a veto, you need to be in the intake. Otherwise, you're going to come in step 3 or 4 in the process and say, "No, I don't like this person." We're like, "Well, hang on, based on what?" Based on what? Because everything else has been run, according to a process. So, like, we try to make sure these things are really aligned, and there is a black hole in that. There's a lot of work to document everything from those sessions if they're not recorded, and we don't. Again, you're going a step further by making that even the process of documenting what is said in those sessions. You're productizing that as well. That is, I think, an unbelievable thing. In your opinion, do you speak to are you hearing recruiters saying that meeting is super important, or are you finding that actually this is a thing that you're working on that you think is going to help recruiters? Where do you sit on
that? So I think most folks would agree it's super important. Now, if you've done the same role over and over and over and over, it's like, okay, yeah, you don't need to do another kickoff call to hire the 15th SDR, but like doing a kickoff call to capture insights about this SDR sprint that we're doing, like, that's super valuable because you can build pipelines. And again, what we're seeing is everybody struggles with recruitment marketing and authentic content, around branding or even just recruitment marketing or advertising jobs. Yet we all have this incredible conversation that's packed full of amazing content as the first step of our process. We just have never tapped into that incredible content. So there's just a lot to be said for, again, not adding steps. We don't want to add hiring managers work for hiring managers. We don't want to send in a video crew or have to edit anything. And but that's why we just have the career video on our career site, and we don't have unique content for every department, team, or even rec. Well, now we can take 3 snippets from a great intake call, embed those on a career site or add them to a link. And when we reach out to candidates, say,
hey,
WhatsApp. WhatsApp link. It brings the opportunity to life. And I'd say, most importantly, in the world of AI, right? It's everywhere around us. Text is being created here and there. Being able to hear someone's voice, or even getting to know the hiring manager earlier in the application or recruiting experience,
that's another layer of authenticity.
Builds trust, stands out. That's where human connections happen.
I was talking about the sourcer side, where you definitely, you can send it through WhatsApp, you can send it an email, and you can send a link. Have you done some data or any analysis around the difference in the open rates or the reply rates when you send an email, just generate an email? Here's a job ad. Here's
a case study. I've got I'm a physical case.
Then, let's do it.
Have you got any stats at all? The difference between that and versus sending it.
We do need to do a formal case study with that, and we've actually approached a couple sourcing gurus we know to do that, who are data geeks and can help us like really crunch that. But we've actually heard just a lot of feedback and stories from recruiters and talent partners who use your technology about, man, this person was heads down, happy in their job, 8 years, wasn't looking. And then they heard this hiring manager explain why the job's open, and they got on my calendar. And they told me that's the only reason they did, because they weren't actively looking. So again, I think a lot of sourcers and recruiters have thought about, how do I optimize my email to try to make the candidate know that it's not a template when they know it's a template, versus thinking about a better way to just actually frame an opportunity as a compelling next step in their career and let the person opt in.
Totally
versus
got a great case study for this, and apologies for being excited to talk about this because I haven't spoken about it that much. We've been testing taking snippets from different pieces of content and using it. So we're working with a customer that is in the DAC region in the DAC region. We've been working SDRs in that particular pool. Really difficult. There aren't many more folks that are in our ideal candidate pool that we haven't messaged. There have been hundreds. So of course, message tweaks, subject lines, trying to approach things differently. I said we tried video in this. Now we didn't get to the HM recording something to send, but I worked with one of our sources here to because I do a lot of video prospecting in our sales process.
Sure.
So I work really closely with them on like, how do you build authenticity into your sourcing so that you can, like, I disagree. You can't record a video faster than Darren can type an email, like a personalized email. Don't get me wrong, scaled email, I'm not going to beat. You're going to hit lots of people, but I can record a personalized video faster than you can write a personalized email. Was my vibe. The response.
Vidyard's great. Yeah, Vidyard's amazing.
Yeah.
We use that for all sorts of things, and again, just clear communication, authenticity, zero interpretation. But I think
it's okay if you mess it up a bit.
But
right?
do candidates want to hear? Like, here's where I balk at that a little bit. It's like, again, candidates don't want to hear a recruiter's interpretation or opinion of the job. So again, video can stand out, but again, it's like they want to know. They want to hear it from the source. They want to meet the hiring. And again, why are we hiding hiring managers? I understand why agencies might need to hide the name, photo, type, company name, right? Which you can easily do when you share insights with candidates so that they don't go around your back. That's all one click away. But for internal companies, there's a real opportunity to showcase diverse hiring managers to attract diverse candidates. If you want more diverse candidates applying to your jobs, show them that diverse individuals get promoted and become leaders in the organization.
It also doesn't need to be HM, guys. Like, we can chill out on this. Like, it can be an incumbent. It can be somebody you're going to work with, right? It doesn't have to be an overly edited, like, so the videos that we were using were like unedited, recorded in a minute. They were driven towards a high value thing for the SDR community, which is typically conversion to AM. Like, what's the progression for me to AM? Because no SDR seems to want to stay as an SDR. They all want to be AEs. So we focused on that in the video. We tested Recruiter, which actually, by the way, had really great response rates versus personalized email. So it had great scaled message with personalized video versus personalized email, like direct. So as a comparison, two really difficult things to do. The video outperformed and made the hire from a pool of candidates that had already had 5 or 6 messages from us. Then we started toying with, let's grab an incumbent, just interview them. It's like, hey, why do you work here? Like, what's cool about working here? Why do you stay? Why haven't you left? What brought you here? When you were told you had a choice at the end of probation, why did you go, no, this is cool for me, I'm really enjoying this? In the recruiting process, what was fun? What got you interested? You get loads of snippets from this stuff. It's like you say, it's a big black hole. And, part of intake, going back to that, should be speaking to folks that are in the role already. I don't know about you, Darren, but I have spoke to, I would say, more than a handful of HMs that list out tools that are essential to then speak to an incumbent. They go, no, we haven't used that for 2 years. Right? So before we go to market for anything, it's like, dude, can you just have a look at this quickly? Because I don't want to send an email saying you're on HubSpot and you're on SalesLoft now or something, you know what I mean? Or whatever tech tool it might be, or a language that you say you're using. It's like, it does happen. It's okay to get it wrong. But like,
so Chris,
go on.
Sorry, yeah. I was just going to say, think about that workflow that you just outlined, right? You spend, the outreach to the candidate, having a compelling value prop. They're one click away to get on your calendar. During the call, you're asking a few technical questions tied right to the intake call and job description that are instantly created. You hang up the phone, share a link with the hiring manager. And again, that used to be 6 separate tools, 7 separate tools, hours of connecting the dots, right? Yeah. And so we're really trying to connect all of that in one simple workflow that's purpose built for us, right? For the recruiters and talent partners. And again, it's not it's elevating the conversation and automating all of the tedious stuff. And to your point about talking to employees, I think that's something where we're seeing some really exciting use cases as well, where HR practitioners are using Honeit to talk to their high potential employees and their best employees about internal mobility and stay interviews. And, it's like, okay, we hired you for this. You're doing a great job. Where do you want to be in 2 years? And actually you can share insights like with that when the person wants to go from product marketing to product, right? And help make those intros to other leaders
Love
in the
that.
organization for retention.
We
So
talked about this on a couple of other shows, right, Darren, with folks in your space saying it seems like there's a broader use case for this. It's not just, recording interviews. There's right across the people org, there is a really great use case for needing to structure, particularly like Q&A style meetings where you want to document stuff and recall it and use it in someone's, not just hiring. Like I can imagine during onboarding and definitely end of probation, recalling stuff they said in the recruiting process, saying, hey, by the way, are those things, are you realizing those things you talked about that we said you would get as part of like making quality higher and stuff like that? So I'm with you. I'm absolutely with you. I think
cool.
it's fascinating.
I think the exit interview too. You got 5 people that just put in their notice, and the CEO's super upset, or the SVP of the department. Why are these people leaving? Well, schedule a 10-minute call. Give me your link.
You.
Yeah, like so many times though.
So many people are doing surveys though,
HR.
aren't they, Nick? It's moved to
Surveys.
surveys, which is not.
No,
You're not getting
10-minute call. You're not even giving the candidate the time. That's why they left, most likely. So give them the time. Ask structured questions to keep it fair. Hey, what led to this decision? Hey, is there anything we could have done to figure that out sooner? Hey, would you consider coming back if we were able to fix A, B, and C? Share that data and those answers with leadership to say, hey, this is what the employees are telling us. This is not my HR's interpretation. And I think my guess is that's what makes HR so, we want a seat at the table, yet we deal with all the soft stuff, right? Soft skills, soft stuff in an organization. And it's that people to people stuff. And we've never had a mechanism to share data from those important, meaningful, high-touch human conversations.
100%. I mean, you think about it, right? Or anyone who's listening to this is in a sales org, you speak to those salespeople, ask them how many calls are recorded. Yeah, they'll say every damn one of them is recorded. Right, exactly. Support recorded. It's like it seems to be inside the people org. We're super nervous. There are, of course, some additional legal challenges with it. I get it, and we want it to feel like human to human and super sensitive. So we don't want to start every call with, "By the way, this is recorded for training and whatever purposes."
But it is, and it should be, and it should be.
Yeah, agreed.
It should be.
Yeah, totally.
We're starting to see, to your point about the tides are turning, and this is now becoming, interview intelligence is becoming kind of a market, not just a great product, but a market, in that HR and even legal is starting to recognize interview data as compliance. And I think we can now say, no, we did not ask the candidate about their race or religion or if they had kids. They might have told me they had kids, but I didn't prompt it. And now we have a defensible thing to avoid class action lawsuits. And that's something that HR can get very excited about. So I think we're also starting to see even just, is data a liability or an asset? I think HR is finally, for the innovative leaders and the forward-thinking leaders, they're starting to shift the mindset that this data, this real-time and structured compliant data, is an asset for their organization.
And of course, I don't know like how many years we have to have a commercial system and of business, and I'm talking like millennia, before we start realizing that it's all well and good, you've got a cool product and it's shiny and nice, but it was built by a human being. It was built by something and someone, and those people, they are extreme assets. And I don't like boiling people down to resources or whatever, but though the process for which you go through acquisition of individuals, identifying what's good, what's not, who are the best, who aren't the best, making sure that you are improving that system constantly. It should be, if it's all about hiring the best people, it should be the extreme focus for any startup for me. It's like, and I'm certainly noticing, I'm sure you are as well, Nick, certainly noticing a new era of startups where this kind of stuff that they're like, funny enough, I had a CTO call me the other day, wanted to talk to me about hiring. I was like, dude, this has never happened to me before. I'm not really sure what to do now. People actually just genuinely interested in like, how do I do this really well? Because I know that in a world with more with less, I can't make a mistake now. I'm even more exposed. We've got to get this right.
I love it. And leadership's getting involved, and we realize we're not selling to just recruiting leaders and recruiters anymore. We're selling higher up because people do want to improve the process and get a better. I think if you're looking at new tools and if you're looking at complementing or your current tech stack or recruiting stack, I think you got to ask yourself, what is this? Who is this new tool helping? Is it improving the candidate experience? Is it improving the recruiter experience? Is it improving the hiring manager experience? Because what we're facing as an industry is that we just got off 10 to 15 years of one-way interview tools, right? Which I wouldn't send a product manager, or I wouldn't send a software engineer, I wouldn't send a marketing VP, anything like that. Okay, so chatbots are AI. Like, I think we really need to look at ourselves in the mirror and say, hey, if we want to keep our jobs and keep the human and human resources, what pieces do we keep, right? Versus what pieces do we automate? And again, if we can click a button to do something downstream and put a bunch of work on candidates, the hiring manager can click that same button. So recruiters don't need to be clicking buttons and things like that, right? I think we need to think about, if we were to click a button, is that just helping me, or is that putting more work on the candidate right? So this is beyond just candidate experience. This is beyond just hiring manager experience and recruiter experience. I think it's all connected, and we really need to make some tough decisions as an industry on where we invest money, because where we invest our money is where we keep our jobs. Or again, we talk about AI replacing recruiters. If you invest in tools that do that, like chatbots and one-way interview tools, it's no surprise if that becomes reality.
And the more you buy them, the more they learn, the better they get. Stop buying them.
That's right.
Good time-wise.
I was about to say we're at time. The timer went off. So we've got just two more questions, Nick, and then we'll just say, like, how can folks reach out to you? And one of them was one of your questions anyway. So we'll go with that. Is that all right? So one was what's next. The other one was other tools.
Am I allowed to ask one more question before we do the two?
Cool.
Is that okay, Chris?
Yeah. Go on.
Okay. Okay. 3, 2, 1. In my experience, one of the things, you've worked in agency, you've worked at company side. What I've noticed being on the company side is there's less cross sell when a good candidate comes in, and it could be useful for a role at a company compared to when you go to an agency. So if I work in an agency, the candidate comes through the door and you will cross sell them to multiple companies and you try and push them out. Whereas when you're then looking at a candidate potentially applying in a company, and they might be right for that role, or they might be essential. We will talk about silver medalists. At that point, it kind of the door closes. Is there anything? Yeah, just love to hear your opinion about, like, how do we resolve that problem?
I think it's, again, what are we sharing that's going to help a hiring manager make a better decision faster? If we're forwarding a resume and some scribbled notes that require a second 45-minute call from every hiring manager, then that's not efficient. If we can share information, say a link with insights that we did ask technical questions, we asked about industry expertise, and a busy hiring manager or 7 engineering managers in the company can each invest 3 minutes and hear those technical answers and opt in, that's a very different story. We're not asking each of those hiring managers for 45 minutes next week to talk to the same candidate and have the same conversation. This is where, again, interview collaboration, not just to improve the linear process for one rec, but again, one to many across. Wow, you talked to a great marketing coordinator, boom, hang up the phone, share a Slack channel with the 4 VPs of marketing that are hiring. Each can invest 3 minutes, and boom, expedite.
I also assume in Honeit, right, if you've documented the process for, let's say, a screening call, and we're on a screening call, I can probably recall like the questions for the marketing role, like at speed anyway, to change the interview from an engineering role to...
Even better, you collaborate, and we can instantly create call guides in Honeit right from a job description and give you, right, these are amazing. Or you can share that with the VP of marketing and say, hey, these are the questions we're planning to ask candidates on the very first call. Are there any other questions you like to ask candidates on the third interview? What we could also ask on the very first call. So actually get your business leaders involved in creating those call guides. And now when you hang up the phone, you're sharing it with the marketing manager and the marketing VP, and the VP is going to be willing to invest and participate right earlier in the process because they know they only can hear the answers to the 2 questions they typically ask themselves. This, again, where as recruiters, without changing anybody else's behavior, we can add so much more value to
Yeah, I
our
agree
daily
with you.
conversations and our output, our delivery.
And
And then to your point about the external agencies, Darren, yeah, external agencies, you place 3 candidates with a client, or you submit 3 candidates, one gets the job, you've got 2 incredible runner-up candidates. And we have incredible success stories of now I can create an NPC. I click one button to hide their name, photo, resume, LinkedIn URL, and name in the summary. And I have an NPC link with 4 candidates who are available in this city. I can share that link with 5 prospective clients and say, hey, we already talked to 5 amazing candidates. I'm showing my work. I'm doing something different than the 99% of other recruiters who just say they have talked to a great candidate. Let's talk.
also, you show the quality, I guess, in the call, right? I mean, one of
Yep.
the differentiators as a recruiter is that call is where we win and lose, right? So if you can say to a class, like, hey, how many other recruiters shared the screening call with you? You cannot. I asked the questions that we put together. I also created some more. Here's the scorecard we use like. I often speak to recruiters about this whenever they come to me, or I've got friends in the space. I quite often say to them like, "What is your differentiator?" Because it's really boring for you to keep saying you've got the best candidates in the market.
Yep. Everybody says it. Nobody
Yeah,
shows it, right? We
yeah,
all talk. Now we can help recruiters kind of put their money where their mouth is, literally, and stand out to candidates and say, hey, I'm
yeah.
a recruiter worth talking to, or stand out to prospective clients, say, I'm a recruiter worth
I
talking
can
to,
find you the top
or
1%.
to client, to hiring managers saying, hey, this is a candidate worth talking to.
You've got stats and data that whenever you send the candidate, it's a hiring manager, those interview, those clips, and they ask, do you have what the review time on average from a hiring manager community is? Just as sort of a general, because obviously there's different clients have different things, but Chris and I were talking about this before. How quick is sometimes the hiring manager are responding or reviewing?
Yeah, I
Because
mean,
we always feel they're the bottleneck at times.
clicks, like the view of the link, could be like 4 hours, which is pretty quick because people are
Yeah,
busy
that's
and
quick.
things like that.
Yeah.
Feedback comes kind of soon after that because
Okay.
they click the link, they listen to 2 minutes of highlights, they click the feedback button, and they're like, boom, yeah, let's get Darren on site. I don't need another 45-minute call.
Yeah.
Again, it's all time stamped and tracked, and you can look at that as an organization or team, or you can look at that by individual recruiters to see where the bottlenecks and burnout and some of that stuff happens throughout the process.
Because that draws down your time to alignment, right? As well, you get a bit better at that stuff. You get the hiring manager reviewing; they're a bit more engaged. They can do stuff, drawing all this stuff back, and then we get aligned much faster. And we get a market much faster. Love it. I'm in. How do I buy? I'm joking. I should reach out to you. We'll cover that stuff actually in a minute. But our last 2 questions that we always ask every guest. One is about you guys. One is about what you see in the market and tools you see in the space. Before we end the show. So number 1 is like, what is next for Honeit? So you've got where you're at now. Where are you looking? What's next?
So we've been, for years, we've been capturing this incredible data set of interview intelligence, right? From screening conversations or interviews or intake calls and things like that. And I think while we've captured a lot of this incredible qualitative data, again, without AI making decisions for us, we're very interested in helping kind of tie these interview questions, interview answers, interview insights, interview skill tags, interview notes to structured skills or potential competencies. Because again, skills tech is it's a buzzword. Again, it's lost its meaning. But we fundamentally think if you're asking questions tied to particular skills, and you share that link with 4 experts in your organization who know what a great versus good versus a bad answer is to that question, whether it's a marketing automation technique or a Java answer, right? Those humans can score that answer, right? Not AI, but real people can quickly score it. And now we're turning this very structured and compliant qualitative interview intelligence into quantifiable and skills-based and competency-based interview intelligence, right? And again, without a lot of work, without a lot of smoke and mirrors or algorithms, it's a simple idea of I can now ask a great question and my best and brightest employees, individuals, leaders can quickly assess that important answer.
I like that. That's your unique view on this. I'm noticing. I was going to one of my questions I had, but you answered it quite a lot. Was what differentiates you guys. But I like the vibe of like you can now put more pressure on recruiting because we can document more. My to your point, Darren, my opinion on the answer is now relevant. I'm asking a technical question. The answer's documented. no one needs to go. Like, no, not many interview intelligence platforms we've chatted to have used that as the major benefit. But actually, every time you unpack it, my brain starts to go, oh, God, yeah, you're right. Like, what? Like, that's so clever.
Well, I think just shrinking it back to what can recruiters and talent partners control. And again, we've been held accountable for all these silly metrics like time to hire and quality of hire, which we've been trying to, which doesn't impact us, right? The SVP was out on vacation for 2 weeks. That's why it's two, right? But what we can control as recruiters and talent partners is how quickly we get someone on the phone, how quickly we get them off our desk to the client, how quickly they get feedback, and we can expedite next steps. So if we frame interview intelligence as more candidate screening and submission workflow, this really helps us, again, elevate our conversations and automate all the tedious stuff and deliver more value. So I think what we're framing this now is we've been talking about interview intelligence for years, but I think more interesting for recruiters and talent partners is the missing gap between sourcing and your ATS, which is scheduling, screening, submissions, which is what we can control.
Like it, love it, and I really like the view of it. Our final question, Nick, for you, was actually two more, but one is selfless. Is what other tools, can be in your space, can be out of your space, have been really important? We're a tech podcast, right? What other tools are you seeing that you're really impressed with at the moment? It doesn't have to be, in interview intelligence, it could be any part of the TA or HR tech stack, but what has been really impressive to you?
A tool we recently saw and even used was, so I've always been a super cyber sleuth and into the cyber sleuthing sourcing community, like early source cons and all that stuff. And I've loved the ability of sourcing for candidates and data and things like that. There's a company that does that well, Fetcher AI, but they've added kind of a curation layer to it, which I think is interesting, where, I can do it myself, or with the help of a human and a kind of a sourcing as a service solution, we can actually set up our requirements, and then someone helps build out some funnels. We can quickly, yes, 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 no, yes, no, yes, no, yes, no. The email workflows are automatic. We paste a Honeit scheduling link into those to automatically then connect the next 3 S's and then push data into the ATS. But I think there's this interesting aspect of, being an expert sourcer. Yeah, so there's some really expert sourcers out there. LinkedIn's been dumbing down its product to try to help all HR generalists become sourcers, right? But then again, that ruins the ability to get to the golden, hidden candidates. So where is that balance? And I think there may be an opportunity where you combine the rigor of advanced sourcing techniques with maybe a sourcing as a service model. And then as a recruiter, I can still focus on the high level conversations and have people on my calendar, right? So
it's also one of the most difficult parts. I notice a lot of our requests come at that sourcing as a service end, because it's a tough bit, man. Everyone wants to be at that top bit, but no one wants to be really good at sourcing. So love that opinion. Sorry, Darren, were you going to say something?
No, I'm aware of Fetcher AI, but I hadn't seen they've added that as an additional.
I am going to look it up, and we're going to invite them on the show. So thanks for that, Nick.
Yeah.
Cool. Our very, very last question before we say goodbye is: how the hell can people reach out to you if they want to grab a demo or want to just chat to you? What's the best way to get in touch?
Yeah, so Honeit.com is the website. We've got free trials, so sign up for a 21-day free trial. Training, onboarding, support from our team is included in the free trial, and that helps you build the business case of the time savings to the recruiters and the time savings to your hiring managers you'll get. And we have transparent pricing. You can see it on the site. We don't hide that. And we think it's a real good consolidation play. You don't have to pay for all these tools. We've got an all-in-one solution for recruiters. So sign up for a free trial. If you want to see a demo, you can book a demo right from the site. Or my email is nick@honeit.com. Feel free to reach out. We can do a live call through the system, and you can see how it works firsthand.
Nice. Clever. Nice. Well, look, thank you so much for coming on. It's been great. Absolutely great fun to have you here.
Thanks, Chris. Thanks, Darren. We appreciate it. Thanks for letting me be a part of it.
Pleasure. And guys, before you check out today, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. There will be a demo of Honeit that we are anticipating an imminent launch of. So please don't hesitate to come check that out. Reach out to Nick if you'd like to learn more. And that's it for this week on TA Tech Unboxed.
Thanks so much.
Thanks, everybody.
Take care.